250, 260 into the kilometre, still accelerating.
A giant of the 50s and 60s, achieving 7 water speed records.
A new world record.
And the only man to ever break the land and water speed record in the same calendar year. Donald Campbell was untouchable. But in January of 1967, tragedy struck.
A call came down from reception, and as I'm walking up the steps into the reception, I thought, who would be phoning me this time of the morning? And I had a premonition. I knew in the pit of my stomach something had happened to my dad.
As Bluebird crashed, Donald was killed instantly. But to this day, he's still remembered as the speed ace who brought global attention to the tiny village of Coniston.
I just feel him all around this place. I think the village does as well. And that goes on, of course, to the reason why it's so important that we get Bluebird home.
Immediately after the accident, Bluebird sank to the bottom of the lake. Then, after almost 3 decades had passed by, Gina Campbell was contacted by diver Bill Smith. In 1996, Bill and his dive team began their search for Bluebird. Then, in 2001, the main section of the boat's hull was recovered and Donald's body was brought back to land. He was then finally laid to rest in Coniston Cemetery. After that, the Bluebird project was established in an attempt to restore that once legendary vessel back to its former glory. However, once the restoration was complete, that's when the legal issues began.
Over the years, it was agreed in all varying stages that Bluebird would remain in the care of the Bluebird project. That was always the understanding. And now the museum's trying to kick us out without a beat. Nowhere is it written down the Bluebird project will be thrown out empty-handed. So we've been saying since 2018, come on, you wrote this down, you wrote that down, you wrote the other down, we need to get a new deal on the table, and they just said no.
In February of this year, the Ruskin Museum in Coniston served legal papers to Bill Smith and the Bluebird project.
It was agreed in 2006 by deed of gift from the Campbell family to the museum that Bill would lead a restoration at no cost to the museum. Well, that restoration is all but complete, and really we'd like to see her back here because that was the agreement and that was what everybody was working towards. It was put in the museum system to be saved for the nation. It wasn't supposed to be one man's personal train set.
In 2019, a draft agreement was put forward that would have seen Bluebird housed in the museum for 9 months of the year and cared for by the Bluebird project for the remaining 3. However, unable to come to an agreement, that's where negotiations stopped.
Donald would say there was a deal done. There was a lot of charitable elements to it. And the final charitable element, to me, should be putting the boat in a museum.
This boat should be out on the water, it should be run by the Bluebird project, who nurtured it and loved it and willed it back to life for 20 years, and the rest of the time it should be on display in the museum. That's what the public says. I will go with what the public says. Gina and the museum ought to be big enough to do likewise.
Go. Speed unlimited.
Donald Campbell always said skipper stays with the boat. But now all parties involved stand on the precipice of a legal battle to decide the future of Bluebird K7. Sophie Reaper, GB News.